What's your story? Whether you're a client or an independent financial advisor, we know you face many important decisions that can affect your and your clients' long-term financial success. Welcome to the WIN Podcast, What's Important Now with Corey Heimensen, accredited investment fiduciary and president of Heimensen Wealth Advisors. In this podcast, Corey helps you identify your goals and objectives through financial education and comprehensive planning, while inspiring you to make better behavioral decisions in your personal finance. With a twist on pop culture and current events, join us as we explore growth and protection strategies for individuals, advisors, and their businesses. Come and discover what's important to you now.
Hello, and welcome to the What's Important Now podcast with Corey Heimensen. Corey, I love this podcast. I'm not going to lie here. It's always interesting to tune in and think, where's he going to go today?
I appreciate that, and I affectionately, tell family and friends that I'm a fountain of information and knowledge, and yet my closest friends maybe say I'm more of a cavern of unusual thoughts.
Well, some might say you're even a loose fire hose.
But life's got to be interesting. So let's try. And
life's got to be interesting, cool. And it does not rule out financial advice. That ought to be interesting too.
Well, yeah, I'm not going to sit here and not change the tone or inflection of my voice. We're going to try and have fun with some ups and downs, and tell finance like it is, but connect it to some real life stuff that. Off the air here, we were talking about comedians. I mean, sometimes the best comedians are the ones that bring real life to you in ways that you hadn't thought about.
Exactly. Well, you know what? That's the secret, really, honestly. The secret to good comedy is that it twists the perspective. It turns the table a little bit and makes you see it in a different kind of way in which it strikes you as suddenly funny, Yeah,
there you go. And people scratch their head and say, I hadn't thought of that. Exactly. And so maybe that's what we're trying to accomplish here too.
Well, you do a good job of that. Where are we going today?
Well, in the spirit of travel, I thought we'd go to aviation. Oh. So I've titled this one Preflight Checklists and Financial Planning.
Okay.
Or checks, preflight checks. Either one, checks, checklists. And so I want to try and connect similarities of airline travel or flight preparation by pilots and successful strategies in money and wealth and those things in financial planning.
Oh, I can see that parallel pretty easily because I do have a couple of friends and a couple of guys who are pilots, not commercial pilots. Well, actually, I've got a friend who's a commercial pilot. So, I mean, I know that they don't just run out to their airplane, jump in it, start it up, and fly away. So,
yeah, and I thought of this topic not the first time I ever saw a commercial pilot, walk around an aircraft. If you've ever been to an if you've ever been to an airport, big windows, they want to keep everybody entertained while they're waiting hour after hour. You'll see the pilot walk around on the ground, looking at things, and it's a meticulous process, I think, inside the aircraft and out. And there's a reason for that. The reason is that at the end of the day, that pilot is accountable for a successful journey, I think. If a flight has a really, really bad ending, I'm talking disastrous ending, they're going to go back to the recording. They're going to go back to pilot processes. Maybe they check the ground crew. I don't know. But I mean, I can't imagine the headline would be, hourly union worker on the tarmac missed this. You know what I mean?
No, I do know exactly what you mean. Yes.
And so I got to thinking about that what goes through that pilot's mind, or why would they go through check by check by check for something that seems so mundane, and they do the same darn thing every day, but it's so much more than that. And that's similar to what we talk about day in and day out here with finance.
Yeah, but it's one of those things. Piloting is interesting. Piloting an aircraft has or can have some immediate deadly consequences, or it can be totally mundane. It's amazing, Corey. We go to airports now, we get on planes, and we fly several hundred or several thousand miles, and we take that whole process, that whole experience for granted.
That's exactly right.
but it doesn't happen that way, does it? I mean, it really doesn't. It looks mundane, but as you noted and started to talk about, there's a guy or gal, there's a pilot walking around, looking at their aircraft, running through their instrument checks, doing all of that stuff because all of that stuff is important.
Yeah, I think for a successful outcome, you can't gloss over the details. And so that's why I'm sure it's a step-by-step process. If they have 20 things they have to check, I'd likely hazard a guess that they do them in order. You know what I mean? It isn't like, I'll just randomly pick and choose these and, we'll probably get through all 20.
Right. Yeah.
God, I hope not, As you were saying that, though, the first thing that came to my mind on the mundane travel is, and I didn't even have this in my notes, but, I think about investors who experience a loss or a decline on paper for their statement. And the defeat, the anguish, the pain of that is so much more than the good feels good, so to speak, when they get a statement and they made money. You know what I mean? And there's been studies, this was found, lots and lots of years ago, that basically losses hurt more than gains feel good.
Oh yeah.
And so I tie that to travel. You're right. You go to the airport, you expect TSA security, you expect your bags to arrive, you expect no problems, no annoying travelers on that flight. There's so many things you just expect to be perfect. And so when they're not, and it's not perfectly mundane, you get a little crabby, and that's what sticks in your head. But at the end of the day, it was probably cheaper than driving your car from Philly to Los Angeles,
And a heck of a lot faster too.
Time has value, man. Yeah. So
it does.
I'm not a big traveling person anymore. If I have to get somewhere for work or whatever, I don't have a private plane, but if I have to travel across the country somewhere, it's a no-brainer that it's going to be a flight.
Yeah.
And so let's dig into the pilot process a little bit. I'm not saying we're going to get highly technical here, but I think the exterior inspection is sort of similar to a first meeting that a person like me might have with a prospect or a potential new client. It's like the pilot checks out the plane, the exterior, the larger picture of the body of work. And my question as a financial guy is like, what are we working with in this situation? Essentially it's the same sort of thing. That's my view of the exterior of somebody's path forward, let's say.
Yeah.
And if there's obvious cracks in the plane, or there's obvious cracks in the situation I'm talking about with clients or prospects ahead of me, that's a pretty obvious solution. Hey, maybe we're going to take a little time and dig into this before we just load up and start heading forward.
Yeah, it sounds to me, Corey, and you can either agree or correct me, it sounds to me that you're hinting at preparation is the key.
Yeah.
Well, investing or to flying.
Well, yeah, or heck, you can connect that to sports. You can connect that to anything. You got to put the work in, and be prepared for whatever might come at you next, because there will be uncertainty on that flight or in life or sports, health. We can go on and on and on, and so, once you prepare from a holistic standpoint on the outside, then let's get inside. Let's walk inside that plane and check the cockpit area and get prepared for the gadgets and whatever else instruments and things they have to check. And to me, that's the next step in my conversation with somebody is, okay, we figured out what we're working with. Now we figure out who are we working with, Mr. Client, Mrs. Client, prospect, Tell me more. Get to know somebody. This isn't just a chart and graph world that I sit in every damn day. It's so much deeper. It's so much human nature and emotions that you got to have a handle on those things.
So true. So true.
And a financial advisor, to a certain extent, probably has the same characteristic as a good pilot, that you can take the emotion and the fear out of some things when stuff's not going right, too.
Yeah.
You know,
If you've ever been on a plane that's gone through some really rough turbulence, it's amazing how much or how calming it can be with the flight attendants who've been through it before, or when the pilot comes on and goes, folks, we just hit a little rough patch. It's going to be okay now. Sorry about the bumpy ride. And, and you're like, oh, okay, it's all going to be all right. This will be okay. Clearly they've done this before. So
yeah, you want somebody that's not their first rodeo, right?
Exactly.
That calming influence is what you need. On a random note, I've always wondered why, if we have so much technology, why you can't understand the pilot when he talks over the intercom.
Well, that's a different deal.
I digress.
They still use that same technology in the New York City subways too.
There you go. But it isn't just the pilot that's doing their safety checks or their processes. If you get on a flight, doesn't matter if it's a short flight, long flight, you're going to hear the same speech or process of, hey, if an oxygen mask falls, this is what we're going to do. Here's how to work a seatbelt, unless you own a 1964 Ford pickup truck that doesn't have them. You know what I mean? That down to the minute detail, they dial this stuff in just to remind you, that they know. So that should make you feel better that those people know and have been through this before.
Yeah, it's interesting. As we're talking, I'm thinking about the importance of preparation. And several years ago, a little longer than several years ago, there was a pilot who took off from a New York City airport and went up in the air and realized this plane I'm flying isn't going to go where it needs to go. And he had to do something that was never, ever done before, which was land that plane on water, which in this case was the Hudson River. And I had the good fortune to meet Captain Sully.
Oh, really?
After a couple of days after he pulled off his feat. And it was really impressive. It was pretty cool. But it's like he what he said then that day when I was talking to him, and what he said every day since, is that the key to having that happen wasn't good fortune. It was being prepared for things that you think might not happen. And it underscored to me the importance of just, what we've been talking about so far, just that the idea of be prepared, do your checklist.
That is so spot on. I'm almost speechless because I actually made notes here, and I was going to share these with you, that if you asked me, name a pilot, Corey, that's the guy. That is the guy that comes to mind. I mean, immediately. I don't know Sully Sullenberger, but I mean, I can visualize that aircraft sitting in the Hudson River with the people standing on the wings as they're going to get evacuated.
Yeah.
I mean, stuff was getting real. I remember seeing that on, I watched the Business Network on TV. So, I mean, that stuff was live action. You're watching these people stand on a plane wing in the middle of the Hudson. You think, what in the world is this?
Oh yeah, that was like 3 miles from. That was like maybe at most 3 miles from our offices at the time. My offices.
And it's funny because I wrote down some quotes here today from that pilot, and this totally ties into what you're saying. And the first one was, his quote was, "There's simply no substitute for experience in terms of aviation safety." So, just like what you were saying,
Amen.
Be prepared. And the guy had flown before, but
right.
Still, he hadn't landed it on water before. I'm pretty darn sure.
Nobody, hey Corey, nobody had ever landed a plane on water before.
Man,
not unless it was a seaplane. I mean, seriously, think about that.
Well, and if you got no other option and you're a highly populated metropolitan area, what's option 2? You can't land it on a street. You know what I mean? That's wild. and actually, the second quote I have from him even ties deeper, and this is his words. This is his words, into what we're talking about from finances. And this is, having a plan enabled us to keep our hope alive. Perhaps in a similar fashion, people who are in their own personal crises, whether that's a pink slip, a foreclosure, they can be reminded that no matter how dire the circumstance or how little time you have to deal with it, further action is always possible. There's always a way out of even the tightest spot. So,
Amen.
Amen. Guy, and I don't know how many people were on that flight. It was more than a handful. You know what I mean? There was a lot of people depending on him to come through with a solution in a really, really bad time or a bad spot. And he did it. And that's no damn different than what people like me do. I mean, life, financial planning, it's not going to be perfect all the time. So we got to make the best decisions we can and land those so-called life planes wherever we can at the best way possible.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, no. And while you're not flying a plane load of people, you are in essence flying a bunch of clients who are relying on you for insight, for opinion, for some guidance, and hoping that you will walk them through that checklist that they're going to need at some point in order to be ready for retirement.
I joke with clients or even people that find out what I do if I meet them in public, and I say, there's a couple words in my vocabulary that I never use, and that's guarantee or promise. But as I joke about that, clients that come into our firm or any financial firm, they expect mundane. You know what I mean?
Yes.
and I'm the voice of reason, or maybe something. Maybe that's where I should use the guarantee or the promise in my vocabulary and say, I'll guarantee you this is not going to be mundane. I promise you that markets will fluctuate. And so when you call me and wonder why your statement went down 2 months in a row, I'll tell you markets do what markets do. And this was expected. And setting expectations and communicating those, that's the same thing the pilot does and the crew on that flight. They're setting expectations, maybe not probability of certain things like a sudden drop in altitude or lack of oxygen or things like that.
Well, no.
But people
nobody wants to get on a plane and be told, this plane could crash.
That people that sit in my world, maybe we should, have a 2-minute video at the start of every meeting to remind people of what happens when the slides come out the side of the plane and how you jump off the edge and hold your arms over your chest, flotation device under your seat.
That'd be innovative, Corey. That would be very innovative.
We might be onto something. Every time there's a down month in the market, we just automatically send that video out.
Just a reminder.
It would cut back the number of phone calls we get on the 8th of the month after people get their statements in the mail.
Amen.
But yeah, and that's what makes for that mundane travel is when you've received the expectations and the guidance and the coaching and things go right. And even in the investing finance world, most of the time you do those checklist items. You work with somebody that's prepared and been through the rodeo before. It usually works out. That's the secret. It works out.
Yeah, exactly. But I think the points you've made so far are actually pretty interesting. One is that a financial advisor like yourself needs to know who they're working with. They need to know what their tolerance is for risk or their appetite for risk is, and I think that the client needs to, on the reverse side, needs to understand who it is that's serving as their financial advisor. It gives them a better picture, and then you can set expectations for people, and it's a process that I guess reassuring, informative. I'm not sure what the right adjective here would be or adverb, but it at least sets up the table for everybody to understand the process.
Yeah. My mind is Shocker, Bill. My mind's going off the rails.
Oh, no. That's bad because we weren't on a train.
Planes, trains, automobiles. So as you were saying that, it's spot on. And what I was visualizing in my head is, what if there was a pre-flight survey, let's say, and the pilot collects these answers and the flight crew, and it's, have you flown before? And the entire flight passengers say no.
Yeah.
And then, are you an optimist or a pessimist by nature? They all say pessimist. You know, if certain questionnaire answers came up, would the pilot and the flight crew then give a different communication to the cabin of expectations and things that could go wrong, things that are common? And if so, why wouldn't a good financial professional do the same thing? You know what I mean? If you're dealing with somebody, and we do this, shocker, I tied this all together. We do this, you know, if we're working with somebody that's never invested before, we have to talk to them and set expectations in a different way than somebody that's been doing this for 40 years and is very astute at it and different, you know?
Right.
The experience has to be tailored in order to even deliver the best feeling emotional outcome on the back end.
Which sounds a lot to me like one word, actually, communication.
Spot on. And I think we've probably covered that to death in previous episodes too, but communication, you know, it doesn't matter if it's with your professional or your doctor or your spouse, man, kids, anybody. Communication solves problems. You might not like the communication, but at least it lays it out there and you know what you're up against. And, you know, emotions they're a strong thing.
Yes.
Emotions are a wonderful thing. I think, you know, it's good that's like the old Jim Valvano speech from years and years ago, the basketball coach. It's good to cry. It's good to laugh. You know, it's good to be moved to tears every damn day. You know, how cool is that? And that's a whole nother episode. But anyway, emotions they're a wonderful thing. And yet there's probably times when you got to curb them, so to speak, because emotional decision-making is not good decision-making a lot of times. And a good pilot, a good flight crew, a good advisor reins you in sometimes and helps you to think rationally, you know, and that brings me to the third quote from Sully. And this is, I should probably get a banner hung in my office because I just love this one so much. I have never been so challenged in an airplane that I doubted the outcome. And when I read that, wow. I think my chest puffed up a little and I got a little taller. And I thought, you know what? I'm in my 25th year of doing this, and I have never doubted the outcome of a client's path forward if they stick to the plan and believe, you know? Mm-hmm. And that's who you want in your corner, somebody like that.
No, I agree. I like that quote a lot, actually.
I mean, it's got so many. I mean, we could probably add single words to it, couldn't we? You know, like confidence, expertise. And those are all action dominant, awesome words. I'm getting all fired up.
There you go. There you go.
You're probably about ready to wrap me up, and I'm just getting going. You know, we joke about artificial intelligence. You know, that's something artificial intelligence can never bring. Is the raw fire and spark and desire to just deliver human emotion, solid answers.
True.
There you go.
I mean, AI can copy. That's what AI can do. AI can copy. But, you know, the question of whether AI can innovate is an entirely different question, and certainly whether AI can't be influenced by emotion. It can experience those moments in our lives where they're, you know, uniquely human. I don't know any other way to say it.
Yeah, no, I mean, that's spot on. I got nothing. You nailed it. Drop the mic.
Boom. Let's all walk away now.
Oh.
Well, look, this is actually really interesting. And I'll add one last little thing about emotion. Yes, emotions are great. It's great to laugh. It's great to cry. It's great to feel. It's great to know you're human, in that sense. They can betray you at times because, look, I in my career, I covered some really hectic, crazy, turbulent times, both in the market, in the economy. And you find your comfort in those moments talking to people who have been there, who've had experience with it, who've seen things like this before, who understand, that it's going to be okay, despite how horrible and terrible this particular moment might be. And I see that translating to financial advisors, because you're right. I know people get their statements and people are upset. They're like, hey, and it falls on you and other financial advisors to be that voice of experience, that voice of guidance, that voice of saying, look, we've gone through a checklist. We're prepared. And it's not unusual to hit these periods of turbulence. Sometimes it can be really upsetting and really scary, but it's going to be okay.
No, you're exactly right. And the gentleman's name is escaping me right now, but as you're telling that story, I'm remembering, I don't think he's with us anymore, but he was one of the chairman of the financial firms in New York. And on the worst market days possible, they said that you could see him. He would leave his corner office and he would walk around the trading floor where all the younger traders were panicking, essentially on Wall Street. And he had a yo-yo. And he would walk around and he essentially, so this is like an 80-year-old guy, head of the firm, been there forever, essentially a billionaire. And he would walk around just like nothing was wrong, and that was his way of showing confidence and, hey, this is common. And just cooler heads would prevail. It's such a silly story to even think of this visual, but that's what he did. He didn't go around and pound the desk and tell him to fill more orders. It was, hey, I've been here before, and this isn't new.
Yeah, that's great. I've not heard that story.
I'm going to have to do my homework and find out who that was, because I can't remember if it was Bear Stearns or Lehman Brothers or, maybe we don't want to dig deep into those two companies. But regardless, listeners that don't know how those firms turned out, I don't think it was the fault of that guy.
But I just to tie it back into this whole theme, I would argue that the troubles that happened at those companies were because people weren't doing their homework and weren't doing their checklist and weren't prepared and didn't understand what they were getting into. And that is a whole other, long, interesting foray into history that we don't want to get into now. But it does tie back into your point of having a checklist and reviewing your plan of action.
Absolutely. And I think to your point of what you're saying there, you got to understand from a high level what your plan is and what you're involved in. But a lot of that can be handed off or the main responsibility of the advisor who does it every day. Yeah.
Well, listen, for those people who are listening to this podcast right now and thinking, I'd like to have a further conversation, especially with this guy, I've never heard of before, Corey. How would they get a hold of you? How do they reach out to you and maybe initiate a conversation? I know your existing clients know how to get a hold of you and have the conversation, but if somebody new wants to reach out to you, how do they do that?
You bet. Give us a phone call. Office number here, 800-657-4316.
That's pretty simple.
Pretty simple. We answer the phone. We don't have voicemail because we personally answer the calls. So there you go.
Oh, man. There's another bonus. There's not a robot that you have to yell at. That's
there you go.
I am that crazy guy, Corey, the one yelling at robots on phones. So, okay.
I will not press one.
I want a person, damn it. I want a person. Give me a real person. Well, if they call your office, they will get a real person, and that is absolutely reassuring. Thank you, Corey. Thank you so much. I really appreciate this. Was a great visit, as they always are. Listeners, thank you for taking the time to listen. We appreciate you. Without you, there would not be this community of the What's Important Now folks. And if you're not a member of this community, you just happen to listen to this podcast for the first time, hit the subscribe button. It's right there. It's easy. It's about the easiest thing you'll do all day long. Hit the subscribe button, and then you will never miss another podcast from Corey. On behalf of Corey and everybody at Heimensen Wealth, I'm Bill Tucker, reminding you, do not wait to live your best life. Live it today. Thank you.
Thank you for listening to the WIN Podcast. What's Important Now? The show that helps you achieve your financial dreams. To ask questions about topics covered during the show or get a copy of Stop Doing Dumb Things with Your Money by Corey Heimensen, visit www.heimensenwealth.com or give us a call at 712-472-3867. Don't forget to click the follow button below to be notified when new episodes become available. Securities offered through Securities America Inc., member FINRA SIPC. Advisory services offered through Securities America Advisors Inc. Heimensen Wealth Advisors and Securities America are separate entities.